wonderful to welcome another guest here to the RULEMATCH Spot On podcast on this beautiful morning in St Moritz. Amar Kuchinad is the global CEO of Copper. Copper, of course, one of the leading crypto custody solution providers globally. Amar comes from a background very much in the institutional space, Goldman Sachs, and also way back a policy advisor at the SEC. Welcome, Amar.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Ian,
Super,
for
great to have you.
hosting.
I think it's probably an understatement to say that 2024 was a big year for institutions in crypto, moving in, whether it was the ETFs, whether it was tokenization with BlackRock, some of those things. Of course, some institutions have been in the space already for quite some time.
Yeah.
What is your sense now moving into the new year? Where are we with institutionalization of crypto?
I think we're at this stage, this inflection point, and it's obvious from both market prices and as well as you see the activity in the industry, not just around crypto, but also around blockchain. On the crypto side, I think traditional institutions are realizing that it is a real asset class. They are realizing that it is not, I think over time it has become less of a maligned actor type of activity. And so you see participation coming in from the likes of Bank of New York, which got an exemption to SAB 121. You see big institutions who have digital asset teams. And then you see a continuation of some of the blockchain projects that people have been doing, and a real acceleration with TradeWeb and Goldman Sachs and the Canton Network, and a real mix of public and private and permissioned and permissionless blockchains. And I think we're really seeing that adoption now.
And you also see, of course, big trading firms doing lots of things in the space.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's somewhat funny that until November 5th, the best thing and biggest thing that happened in the crypto market was that we took this decentralized blockchain-based product, wrapped it into a ETF wrapper, had it listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and then settled on DTCC
Bit
rails.
ironic, maybe, but yeah.
but I think it is indicative of the big institutions getting in, and I think on the other side of that, the tokenization, whether it's BITL or Benji or USYC, these big institutions getting into the idea of blockchain rails being a method for settling and moving assets has become it's part of the standard dialogue that you now have with institutions.
And as these institutions are coming in, I mean, it's a topic that doesn't get super big headlines, of course, but market structure, market infrastructure, all of these things are important to big players, right? When they're going to be trading, whether it's ETFs or whether it's spot derivative markets. So then that puts a focus on, actually where does the trading happen? How does it happen? All those things, risk management and so on, where custody is a big thing, right?
Yeah, I think what I found from my experience as a credit derivatives trader at the inception of that market back in the 90s is that the unsexy parts of finance are often the key ones for growth. And it wasn't until 2008 when we standardized CDS contracts that business really took off and bloomed, because then you could actually have a real risk management around your counterparty risk, around your actual market risk. And I'm seeing that here. And it's one of the reasons why I was drawn out of TradFi. I am so thoroughly TradFi, it's embarrassing at conferences like this because, I'm gray hair, 50 years old. And yet I think the industry is now realizing that some of that experience is now applicable in the crypto and blockchain space. And so, whether it's regulated and rule-based exchanges for trading, or it's things like Copper does, which while we do provide custody services, we're also a collateral manager. That's, I think, what we largely focus on. We work with other custodians to help mitigate the credit risks and settlement risks on some of the derivative exchanges. And I think that's very important to get the traditional finance players in.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're having conversations with the financial institutions. What do they want to do even more? What other requirements they may have to build out your services, right?
Yeah. I mean, and we have a very healthy mix of crypto native firms, institutions. We're an institutional only financial market infrastructure company, and we've we have crypto native firms that have their own perspective on how things should be done, but now we're increasingly seeing a lot of TradFi firms join, whether it's large hedge funds, even the big banks and dealers are beyond the talk stage, let's say, maybe not actively trading, but are beyond the talk stage of doing things.
Just a personal question. When you came in, as you said, from TradFi, jumped into the crypto space, joining Copper, was there something that you had in your back pocket that you said, I could really bring this with me to help and not say change the world, but to add to...
It's like you were in the board meeting where I had my final interview.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, when I saw the technology that Dimitri and the team at Copper had developed, the first thing that came to mind was the OTC derivatives market. And we would spend inordinate amounts of time reconciling collateral movements, reconciling mark to market. And technology's obviously come a long way since 2011 when I left that business. But I think that there still is a lot more scope for how we move collateral and how we mitigate counterparty exposure. And I think OTC derivatives is this interesting nexus where, unlike some of the other blockchain projects where you need to get 200, 400, the entire market to agree to a change in process, right? DTCC going from T+3 to T+2 to T+1 is like a 7-year process because there's so many participants who have workflows designed. With bilateral OTC trades, you just need two parties to agree that, hey, we'll move collateral on a blockchain, and we'll do that every 2 hours. And that's what Copper does. Copper moves collateral every 2 hours, and it doesn't require 200 people. It doesn't, and even ignoring the people aspect of this, the amount of operational risk capital and the amount of counterparty credit risk capital that I think big financial institutions can save is meaningful.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned counterparty risk. I had a conversation in an earlier podcast episode with someone from a crypto bank here in Switzerland, and he made the very obvious point that everybody talks about counterparty risk when it comes to financial institutions, but as soon as the bull market comes, we suddenly forget about it, and it's not important anymore.
Yeah.
Just talk to me about some of that. You mentioned also rule-based interaction. So if you think overall about market integrity and market structure, how do you think things can move forward and change?
Well, I think this is where for traders. And I still consider myself a trader, even though it's been a while since I managed a trading desk. It's really easy, actually, to trade in volatile markets. Like, I love volatile markets because they provide opportunities to put on positions, take off positions, trade with clients, trade with counterparties.
Yeah.
What is really unhedgeable and really difficult is those singularities. The unhedgeable risk are fraud, regulation changes, instantaneous moves from 100 to 0. And so I think as people recognize that, and I think these lessons have been learned a few times over the last few years in the crypto space, have been learned many, many times over hundreds of years in the traditional finance space, I think that there's a growing awareness that rules matter, regulations do matter. Sensible regulation does matter because it gives people confidence that the participants in this space aren't going to run off with all the money and take 100 to 0, right? And so, to me, the biggest draw for traditional finance comes when there is this framework that looks very similar to what they're used to, and that's, I think, what people, this institutionalization of the asset class is maybe against the ethos of the original DeFi type projects. But I think they can coexist, right? Bring the institutions in along with a little bit of decentralization.
Yeah, I think we see it very, very similarly at RULEMATCH. Just looking forward to 2025. Any particular thing you're super excited about?
I'm excited about the OTC derivatives market.
Yeah.
I'm also excited to see how the market reacts to what is the actual pace of change in government. And especially anticipating, I think there's been a lot of anticipation of regulatory change in the US. We definitely are doubling down our efforts in the US. But having worked at the SEC, I understand that there's no magic wands.
It's not going to happen overnight.
January 21st is not going to be a different day than
yeah.
January 20th, other than by one day.
Very interesting. Thank you very much,
Oh,
Amar,
Ian,
for
I
joining
appreciate
us.
your having me
Super.
on the podcast.
Yeah, great,
Thank
and enjoy the rest of the conference.
you. Thank you. You too.
Yeah.